labored on his enslavers' behalf in capacities that eventually saw him administering day-to-day plantation operations and serving as a trusted confidant to the master and his family. Yet, the pastor managed to commence his ministry as a church without walls within several months of arriving at his new home in Middle Florida's emerging plantation belt. In the years that followed, he may well have become one of the most traveled enslaved preachers of the antebellum era, preaching the word of God to enslaved people in states such as Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, and South Carolina. He even established connections with West Africa. This study thus lays emphasis on this period to find in the complexities of his ministry insights previously not addressed or else considered only sparingly by historians of the antebellum South. Most scholars who have touched upon enslaved preachers at all, unfortunately, have dismissed them as relatively minor players during the antebellum period. Thus far, no scholarly, full-length biography of any 19th century enslaved preacher from slavery to freedom has been published. This remains the case with James Page, even though his achievements in life were substantial, impressive, and enduring. A few memoirs and short autobiographies of other such men have come to public attention, although their impact understandably has been limited. Many extant biographies of slave preachers concern the 18th century and largely amount to uncritical accounts written either by friends or white contemporaries. They tend to emphasize the influence of white and mostly European religious practices upon the development of various Afro-Christian religious customs, giving little or no attention to the enslaved preacher's original and creative thoughts. In the pages of most such biographies, we only hear small whispers, if anything, in the enslaved preacher's voice. Moreover, as those volumes underscore, studies on slave religion have been colored with prejudice. An important exception should be noted. Nancy Bullock Woolridge's 10-page essay entitled The Slave Preacher, Portrait of a Leader appeared in the Journal of Negro Education in 1945. She focused on bondservant perceptions of the enslaved preacher, the treatment preachers received from both blacks and whites, and the religious and temporal influences preachers wielded within the slave community. Given the essay's brevity, Woolridge provided only a quick look at her subject. Still, she included references to a few 19th century preachers who transitioned from slavery to freedom, as did James Page. Of course, biographies of individual black clergymen of Page's times do exist. Henry McNeil Turner, Daniel Payne, and James Walker Hood, to name several, deservedly have received serious study. Quite differently from Page, though, they exerted ministerial influence primarily during postbellum times rather than during the perilous era of plantation slavery. This biography fills that gap by critically examining how a 19th century enslaved preacher overcame seemingly insurmountable odds to emerge as a leader of his people during slavery and after emancipation. During the mid-20th century, with the advent of the civil rights movement, historians began to address slavery, at least partially, from the perspective of the enslaved. Kenneth M. Stamp's The Peculiar Institution helped launch the revisionist trend in 1956, the year of the Montgomery bus boycott. Scholars John Blassingame, Charles V. Hamilton, Donnie D. Bellamy, David Denard, Peter Wood, Charles Joyner, Eugene D. Genovese, and others followed suit, adding new works that revealed more about slave life through the eyes of the enslaved and, in more than a few cases, even touched upon enslaved preachers. In later decades, scholars such as Michael Gomez, Edward Baptist, David Blight, Paul Ortiz, Orville Vernon Burton, Walter Johnson, Lewis V. Baldwin, Richard J. M. Blackett, Steve Hahn, Damian A. Pargas, Annette Gordon Reed, Wilma King, Darlene Clark Hine, Lauren Schweninger, James Oakes, Drew Gilpin Faust, Henry Louis Gates Jr., Peter Colchin, Linda Schwartz, Philip Morgan, P. Sterling Stuckey, Eric Foner, Sven Beckert, Jeff Forrett, John David Smith, Jane Landers, Dinah Ramey Berry, Manisha Sinha, and others further expanded the body of literature considering how enslaved people perceived slavery and developed their